what do you do when you have a new KX250 and a YZ250F? You do a shootout, duh.
Since I was a child, now it's showing its ugly face. What can I do? Music creeps into my dreams, wakes me into sweaty sheets, abandons me when nights died out. What can I do? What can I do? Before it is too late to flee.
All right, everyone, thanks for tuning in. It is a beautiful, hot, and sunny day here at Glen Helen, and as you can see, I've got two very special bikes in front of me. I've got the new 2020 KX250 that Kawasaki just released this year with a lot of new updates, and I've also got the YZ250F. Now, when it comes to the 250 class, horsepower is king, and honestly, I said it last year, Yamaha set the bar pretty dang high with their new YZ250F. So today what we want to do is take the all-new KX250, which they did a lot of work to this thing. They changed the valve train on it. They have a bigger bore with a shorter stroke. And I really think, in my opinion, Kawasaki was gunning for the YZ250F. So what better way to test it out than to put the two head to head? We're out here at Glen Helen, probably one of the best tracks possible if you want to test horsepower, just because of the big hill climbs that they have out here. So we're gonna go through and put these two bikes head to head. I've got Colton Ack out here, who is a professional supercross racer. I'll be the intermediate guy. We're gonna burn some laps, and at the end of the day, we're gonna come back and tell you our thoughts and ultimately give you guys a winner. All right, everyone, thanks for tuning in. So Colton and I, we just got done burning a lot of laps out here at Glen Helen. Track got pretty rough today, square edgy, so it was a really good day for just testing bikes in general. But like I said earlier, we've got the new 2020 KX250 versus the YZ250F. Now, I know it's on the 2020, but remember, from 19 to 20, this bike was unchanged besides graphics, so it's still the same bike. Colton, in my opinion, I think when it comes to motors in the 250 class, that's kind of what's king. And Yamaha, if you ask anybody, it's probably the most dominant bike in the last couple of years. And I think personally, Kawasaki had the Blue Crew in mind when they were building their engine package. They were going to compete with the Yamaha as far as bottom, mid to top. And after you and I rode this bike, they did a pretty freaking good job.
Yeah, they really did. Like you said, the Yamaha has been the best motor for a handful of years now. And you know, everybody else has kind of been lagging behind, but I think Kawasaki really answered, and they have a very impressive motor for 2020.
So we won't tell you which one we think is better yet, because we got some other stuff to talk about, but we're going to talk about engine and chassis feel, we're going to talk about cornering, and then lastly we're going to talk about, you know, which engine package we liked more and which bike ultimately Colton and I would choose if we walked into a dealership today. So we'll start with chassis suspension feel. Colton, kind of tell me how you feel about the bikes.
So we'll start off with the Kawasaki. To me, the Kawasaki has a bit of a rigid feel to it, both chassis and suspension. It's a more precise handling motorcycle, in my opinion. It really is predictable when you lay it into a corner. You know, overall, it's a little bit on the stiffer side. It's more of a performance machine than I would say the Yamaha would be. The Yamaha is more forgiving and more of a comfort feel. The suspension is plush. The chassis really does a good job of absorbing bumps. So it's kind of yin and yang here. You've got tons of performance with the Kawi and tons of comfort with the Yamaha.
All right, so I'm right there with you. I feel like earlier in the day when the track wasn't getting too rough, I didn't really mind the chassis feel too much on the Kawasaki, but as the day got rougher, I started to lean more towards the Yamaha. So you actually prefer the chassis suspension setup with the Kawi, but you're a pro rider, more performance. Me personally, I would go with the Yamaha. More plush feel with the suspension, maybe a little soft. I did go a little bit stiffer, a few clicks, but after that, we didn't touch the bikes, they were great. But like Colton was saying, I prefer the chassis, how much it absorbs the braking bumps, just the square edgy stuff. Just for me as an intermediate guy, it just gives me more comfort, just makes me a little bit more comfortable out on the track. Cornering. For me, I liked how the Kawasaki laid in the corners. It's a little bit more precise, easier to kind of change directions for me. The Yamaha, really good straight line like we were talking about, it absorbs that. For me, it feels just a little bit more lethargic coming into the corners. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I would agree. The Kawi feels like, the people who built it wanted it to corner, where the Yamaha is a little bit more leaning towards, that straight line stability and that bump absorption. So it really comes down to personal preference on what you're looking for.
All right, so you like the way the bike corners and handles on the Kawasaki versus the Yamaha?
Yes,
okay,
absolutely.
I agree with you. Now, last category we're going to talk about is engine package. Like we said, in the 250 class, engine is supreme. That's what guys are looking for. I think a lot of guys nowadays want to be able to ride a 250 almost like a 450, where you can kind of lug it around a little bit, maybe you can carry a gear taller coming through some of the corners. So I'll give my thoughts first. These bikes are really close. They are neck and neck as far as the bottom end goes. If I had to give what bike has the most bark at the bottom, I'm still gonna go with the Yamaha. For me, a little bit more aggressive coming out of turns, carries third geared really well, and that's what people love so much about this bike. But when we compare it to the Kawasaki, I think this bike is it's close, man. It is so close, it's hard to pick apart. But where I think the Kawasaki excels is that mid to top. I think this bike actually carries second and third gear, even fourth longer, and it revs out a little bit farther. So I personally would actually sacrifice a little bit of the bark down low with the Yamaha to get that extra pull that I got out of the Kawasaki. How did you feel about it?
So like you said, the Yamaha I really think has a little bit more bark down low. That throttle response and that torque right off the bottom is better on the Yamaha. In every other condition, I think I prefer the Kawasaki. It's not bad on the bottom by any means. It's got good torque, but it is just slightly less powerful than the Yamaha on the bottom end. So other than that, over rev and mid range is great, and it really beats it out on the top side on the Yamaha. So.
And we did experiment with the different maps on the Yamaha. One of the coolest parts about the Yamaha is they have their Power Tuner app, which I think is kind of the direction I think some other bike brands are going, or probably should go, because you can customize it. So hey, if you can do it, it comes stock. You can do it all you want. It counts in the shootout. So we actually put on the Kiefer Inc. testing map on here today, tried some of those out. But ultimately for me, yeah, I agree. I think the Kawasaki engine package is probably what I would prefer. But the real question is, Colton, if you go to a dealership today, which one of these bikes are you going to buy?
If I'm spending my own money, I'm picking the Kawasaki.
Even with the Kickstarter, because we haven't talked about that yet. Kickstarter,
that's right.
Can't forget the Kickstarter.
Don't even forget, man. I feel like a complete girl saying this, but having electric start is so nice. That's the one thing on the Kawasaki that it could be a deal breaker for me.
And this bike's hard to kick over sometimes.
It is.
It's
yeah,
not.
It makes a lot of compression, so you got to really, put some good effort into it to kick it over.
We've been spoiled with electric starts now for so long that when you get back on a kickstart bike, I know everyone says, it's kicking a bike's not a big deal. Well, I'm getting to the point where it kind of is, and I'm sorry. I know you guys might hate on me for that, but Kickstarter, get rid of the Kickstarter, you're Kawasaki 100%.
Absolutely. I just really prefer the handling character of the Kawasaki. It's just a little bit more precise for me, and like I said, I feel like I get a little bit more performance out of it.
All right. So. You're bleeding green. I'm bleeding blue. For me, if I go into a dealership today, I'm going with the Yamaha, and here's why. We both prefer the engine package on the Kawasaki, but for me, like I said, I just prefer that more comfort, compliant chassis feel, especially when the track gets rough and beat up. I'll sacrifice a little bit of the playfulness and the handling that you get with the Kawasaki, because the Yamaha really isn't that bad. These bikes are very close, and you're really picking these things apart. But for me, I'll sacrifice some of the things that I do like to get the more comfort and compliance feel that I got with the Yamaha. So I'm bleeding blue, Colton is bleeding green.